Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital Today channel. Laura's heart nearly stopped when she flung open the trunk of her car and saw Dalton's lifeless body sprawled across the back, a shocking scene that left her gasping, screaming, and reeling in disbelief. The memories of her last confrontation with him flashed through her mind, every threatening word she had spoken echoing in the silence around her, and for a moment she felt the weight of inevitability pressing down on her. Her hands were smeared with blood, and she instinctively pressed them to her chest, shivering from a combination of fear, guilt, and sheer horror at what she had stumbled upon. She thought of calling Kevin immediately, but he was in Dublin, unreachable across the time zones, and when she dialed Alexis, all she got was her voicemail. Desperation clawed at her throat as she realized she was alone, facing a nightmare she couldn't begin to process. Trembling, she finally reached for another line and made the call that she hoped could provide some semblance of support. Even as tears streamed down her face, she forced herself back into the vehicle, her mind spinning in a whirl of panic and disbelief, unable to shake the image of Dalton's body from her memory. It was then that Nathan appeared, pulling up beside her, and his sudden presence startled her into a new wave of anxiety. She tried to steady herself, forcing a weak laugh as she told him she was just tired and overwhelmed. When he offered to change her flat tire, she hesitated, her nerves fraying under the weight of her secret, and before he could even approach the trunk, Sonny's familiar voice interrupted the tense scene, calm yet authoritative, offering to take care of the tire himself. Laura's laugh was shaky and uncomfortable, masking the inner turmoil that churned like a storm inside her. Once Nathan had left, Sonny's focus turned to the task at hand. He opened the trunk, and his expression tightened as his eyes fell on Dalton's body. Laura's knees buckled slightly as grief, fear, and disbelief hit her all at once. She couldn't speak, she only shook her head, the magnitude of the situation pressing down with crushing force. Sonny, ever the protector and strategist, immediately took control, his voice firm yet reassuring as he instructed Laura to leave the car and allow him to handle the situation. She hesitated, every instinct screaming to do something, anything, but the horror was too fresh, too visceral. Finally, with a shaky nod, she followed his lead, trusting the man she knew could take the impossible burden from her shoulders, if only temporarily. In the safety of his office, Laura crumpled into a chair, sobbing openly for the first time since the discovery, admitting to Sonny that she had frozen the moment she saw Dalton, that she had even checked for a pulse in the futile hope that he might somehow still be alive. Sonny, pragmatic and calm, explained that the body would be taken care of, the car would be returned in the morning after a thorough detailing, and Dalton would never be seen again, erasing the immediate danger from her life. Despite Sonny's reassurance, Laura's mind raced, unable to silence the gnawing suspicion of who could have orchestrated such a tragedy. Her thoughts immediately turned to Sidwell, his recent threats and the malicious energy she had sensed from him in every interaction now coalescing into a terrifying certainty. She voiced her fears aloud, her voice barely more than a whisper, and Sonny listened, nodding as he confirmed that someone was indeed trying to make trouble for her, a calculated and dangerous interference in her already complicated life. Meanwhile, Britt's situation mirrored the tension around Laura, though in a different arena. She hid her medications in a panic as Jason appeared at her door, informing her that Danny and Charlotte had decided to turn themselves in to protect Rocco, taking responsibility for their own actions. The conversation quickly turned to the teen's theft of a key fob from her purse, and Britt's defensive stance made it clear that she understood the implications of such an act, yet feared the consequences. Jason's steady presence reminded her that Rocco's involvement had been circumstantial, that her role in the 5 Poppies and the events surrounding it were far from over, and he needed her transparency to help her. Britt hesitated, wrestling with the fear of exposing herself fully, but Jason promised that she could trust him, that he would prioritize her safety and her interests above all else. As Sonny began calling Jason on a separate matter, Britt told him to go, retreating to her bedroom to confront the memories of Sidwell's threats, the terror and helplessness of knowing that forces beyond her control were manipulating the lives of those she cared about. Back on the chaotic streets, Laura's encounter with Sonny had calmed her just enough to think rationally, though the terror was far from gone. She followed Sonny's instructions, leaving the car behind and allowing him to take control of the volatile situation, her mind still spinning with questions and fear. She had guessed Sidwell's hand in the events that led to Dalton's death, but confirmation was something she could neither seek nor find yet. She was aware, painfully aware, that the world she had lived in, one filled with threats, secrets, and betrayals, had now breached the most intimate corners of her life. Every car ride, every shadowed alley, and every familiar face became a potential threat, a potential link in the chain of manipulation that Sidwell had orchestrated. Dalton's death was not merely a tragedy, it was a signal, a warning, and Laura's intuition told her that surviving it unscathed would require the same cunning and resilience she had developed over years of navigating Port Charles's treacherous waters. Elsewhere, in the tangled web of family tensions and fractured relationships, Michael's encounter with BLQ at General Hospital offered a contrasting, if equally emotional, scenario. Michael ran into her by chance, and the admission that she had been lying to Tracy about Ned being in the hospital revealed the heavy burden she carried, the protective instincts that had led her to conceal truths in an attempt to shield Olivia from further pain. BLQ's voice trembled as she confessed that her heart was broken over the rift between Dante and Gio, the father-son relationship strained to its breaking point by anger, misunderstanding, and unspoken truths. She recognized Joe's innocence in the events that had hurt Rocco, understanding that his intentions were pure, even if circumstances had spiraled out of control. Michael, calm and empathetic, reminded her that father-son relationships were complex, often requiring work, patience, and the steadying support of those who loved them. He encouraged BLQ to reach out to her son despite her fears, assuring her that the bonds forged by love could overcome even the harshest anger or disappointment. The conversation turned to responsibility, forgiveness, and the pride that comes from owning one's choices while learning to separate personal failings from the actions of others. BLQ's heart softened as she absorbed Michael's guidance, culminating in a moment of comfort and warmth as mother and son embraced, the fleeting reassurance of familial support a stark counterpoint to the chaos surrounding Laura's nightmarish discovery. Meanwhile, Chase's sudden intrusion into Alexis' office added another layer of tension to an already volatile situation. Breathless and urgent, he revealed that he could prove Michael had provided a false alibi to the police, a revelation that threatened to unravel secrets and potentially implicate multiple parties in a web of lies, deceit, and unforeseen consequences. The stakes in Port Charles had never been higher, and the fragile alliances and tenuous trust between friends and family were being tested at every turn. The intersection of these events, Laura's discovery, BLQ's confessions, Sonny's protective maneuvers, and Chase's explosive evidence, created a storm of uncertainty, forcing each character to navigate moral ambiguity, personal fear, and the inescapable reality that the actions of one person could ripple outward with catastrophic consequences. As Laura processed the weight of what she had seen, Sonny's steady guidance gave her a temporary lifeline. He promised action, protection, and the erasure of immediate threats, yet he did not diminish the emotional truth she carried. Dalton was dead, and she had seen it with her own eyes. The combination of fear, grief, and instinctive guilt threatened to overwhelm her, yet Sonny's presence provided a buffer, a chance to act rationally and survive the night without succumbing to panic. Her belief that Sidwell was involved only intensified her need for careful navigation. She knew that any misstep could invite further danger, yet doing nothing was equally perilous. In that moment, she recognized the precarious balance of power in Port Charles, the invisible threads of control and manipulation that Sidwell wielded, and the necessity of trusting those who had proven themselves capable of action, like Sonny, Jason, and even Michael in his own way. Every decision, every hesitation, and every flash of insight became critical. Laura's intuition screamed at her, warning of Sidwell's capacity for calculated malice, and she understood that surviving Dalton's death, and the implications it carried, would require courage, precision, and unwavering focus. She reflected on the past, on the countless threats and near misses that had defined her life, and realized that this was yet another test, one that demanded not only emotional fortitude but also strategic thinking. Dalton's murder was not an isolated incident, it was a symptom of a larger conflict, a signal that those who sought to control, manipulate, or punish would stop at nothing to achieve their ends. With Sonny's support and her own resolve, Laura resolved to navigate the dangerous waters ahead, knowing that every step, every choice, and every alliance would determine not only her survival but also the fate of those around her. Through the chaos, through the tears and the fear, a single, clear thought crystallized in Laura's mind: she had to act, and she had to act wisely. Sidwell's hand was unmistakable, his motives transparent to her trained eye, and the path forward required courage tempered with careful strategy. Sonny's reassurances, Jason's loyalty, and her own experience in surviving Port Charles's darker corners would be her guides, but the truth of Dalton's death would remain a shadow over her life until justice, or at least a measure of resolution, could be achieved. In that moment of clarity amidst the storm, Laura understood that survival meant more than mere existence. It meant vigilance, cunning, and the unwavering determination to face danger head-on, even when the cost was high and the path uncertain. She wiped her hands, stained with both metaphorical and literal blood, and took a deep breath, knowing that the road ahead would be perilous, but also understanding that she was not powerless, that the people she trusted and the instincts she had honed over years of trials would guide her through the darkness. And as she finally allowed herself a moment to grieve, to cry for what had been lost and for the dangers yet to come, she also allowed herself a measure of hope, that with Sonny at her side, with careful planning, and with the courage to face the truth, she could survive Sidwell's schemes and navigate the treacherous landscape that Dalton's death had unveiled. Laura sat in Sonny's office, her shoulders shaking as she tried to compose herself, but the sobs came in jagged bursts that made her chest ache. Every detail of the scene on the side of the road haunted her: the cold steel of the trunk latch, the way Dalton's eyes had stared blankly up at her, the unnatural stillness of his body. She couldn't stop seeing it, no matter how tightly she pressed her hands against her face. Sonny, seated across from her, maintained a steady presence, his expression serious but calm, the kind of grounding force Laura had relied on for years in moments when fear threatened to take over. He didn't speak immediately. He let her cry, understanding that the shock she was experiencing was beyond words. Finally, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and spoke in a voice that carried both authority and reassurance. "Laura, we need to make this disappear. The car will be detailed tonight. Dalton will never be seen again. You're not going to be left holding this nightmare alone." Laura swallowed hard, nodding, but the pit in her stomach refused to ease. I can't," she whispered, her voice trembling. I froze. I didn't know what to do. I checked for a pulse. I thought maybe." Her voice broke, and she buried her face in her hands again. Sonny reached out, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "I know. I get it. But right now, there's nothing you can do. You didn't cause this. Someone is trying to hurt you, Sidwell. He's behind this, I'm sure of it. And we'll handle it. But you have to trust me." Laura's mind raced, every memory of Sidwell's recent threats, his cold calculation, and his ability to manipulate situations flashing before her eyes. She nodded again, more resolutely this time, though the fear lingered. "Sidwell, it has to be him. Nobody else, not Dalton, not anyone else. It's Sidwell." Sonny's eyes narrowed slightly, confirming the grim truth she had just voiced. "You're probably right. And that's why we move carefully. No mistakes, no hesitation. We clean this up, and you stay out of sight for tonight." Meanwhile, across town, Britt was wrestling with her own demons. She had hidden her medications carefully, ensuring that no one, especially Jason, could see them, yet every glance at the clock, every soft knock at her door reminded her that the outside world was not forgiving. Jason had promised her safety and discretion, but the weight of responsibility still bore down heavily on her shoulders. Danny and Charlotte's decision to turn themselves in to protect Rocco had only added to her guilt, reminding her that every choice she made had consequences, sometimes for people she cared about most. As she lay back on her bed, she thought of Sidwell's threats again, of the fear that had kept her on edge for weeks. She knew the game he played, the psychological manipulation, and she understood that she was a piece on his board, one that he could move at will unless she regained control. But control was fleeting. Jason's words echoed in her mind: "You can trust me. I'll put you first." She wanted to believe him, desperately, but the fear of exposure, of the dangerous truths he now held, left her in a liminal space between relief and terror. Back on the road, Laura's phone buzzed again, bringing her fleeting hope. She had tried Kevin and Alexis before, but this new call offered the possibility of connection, of guidance in the middle of a nightmare. Her hands were still trembling as she answered, and she tried to articulate the chaos she had just witnessed. I found him. Dalton, he's dead, she stammered, her voice barely audible. Sonny stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on the car, silently urging her to breathe, to focus, to speak clearly. The voice on the other end offered a quiet acknowledgement, a promise to help, but Laura could already feel the immense weight of the situation pressing down from all directions. Every moment spent hesitating, every second of uncertainty, magnified the danger she was in. Sidwell's reach was long, his ability to manipulate, intimidate, and orchestrate chaos was well documented, and Laura knew instinctively that she was now a target in a game whose rules she didn't yet fully understand. While Sonny arranged for the car to be discreetly removed and detailed, Laura tried to process what had happened in those few fleeting minutes by the roadside. The reality of Dalton's death was inescapable. Her thoughts kept returning to the threats she had made publicly, the moments when she had warned him that things would not end well. Those words, once a display of strength, now haunted her, twisting into guilt and fear that she could not ignore. And yet, she had to keep moving forward. She had to survive, to act strategically, and to trust that the people she had relied on in the past, Sonny, Jason, Michael, even Kevin if she could reach him, would help her navigate this new danger. Sidwell's hand in this was clear to her. He had the motive, the cunning, and the patience to orchestrate something like this, and Laura knew that identifying him as the orchestrator was only the first step. She needed proof, leverage, and a plan to counteract his reach. In another part of the city, Chase was racing through Alexis' office with a sense of urgency that made the air feel charged. He had discovered evidence that Michael had given a false alibi to the police, a revelation that threatened to destabilize the delicate web of secrets that bound multiple families and individuals together. Alexis listened, stunned, as Chase outlined his findings, the weight of the information sinking in. If Michael's alibi could be disproved, it would not only implicate him but also create a ripple effect that could expose countless hidden truths, bringing past actions into the harsh light of scrutiny. The implications were staggering. And yet, Chase's excitement was tempered by the fear of what could come next. The wrong move, the wrong word, could destroy lives, relationships, and reputations permanently. Alexis, seasoned in navigating these murky waters, understood immediately the significance of Chase's discovery. Her mind raced through potential consequences, strategic maneuvers, and damage control, all while trying to maintain her composure in front of a young man who was both eager and terrified by the gravity of what he had uncovered. Back at General Hospital, BLQ's encounter with Michael had left her feeling raw and exposed. Her admission of lies regarding Ned had peeled back layers of protective instincts, forcing her to confront emotions she had long tried to suppress. The heartbreak over Dante and Joe's strained relationship weighed heavily, especially given her recognition of Joe's innocence in the situation with Rocco. Michael's empathy and practical advice offered her a blueprint for reconciling with her son, a glimmer of hope in the midst of familial tension and emotional turmoil. As they embraced, mother and son shared a brief moment of solace, a reminder that even in a world filled with deceit, betrayal, and danger, there remained opportunities for healing, forgiveness, and the rebuilding of trust. Meanwhile, Sonny's methodical approach to managing Dalton's body, the car, and Laura's immediate safety underscored his role as protector and strategist. He coordinated discreet transportation, ensured no one would witness the removal, and maintained a calm yet commanding presence that allowed Laura to begin processing her emotions without succumbing to panic. In the background, Jason's protective instincts were activated, ensuring that Britt remained safe and that the threads of danger woven by Sidwell were monitored and mitigated wherever possible. The complexity of the situation required a combination of tactical thinking, emotional intelligence, and an understanding of human behavior that only individuals like Sonny and Jason could provide. Their actions created a buffer, a zone of relative safety in a world that had suddenly become unpredictable, violent, and threatening. Laura, still trembling, tried to focus on the practical realities of the situation. Sidwell's threats had always been unsettling, but the physical manifestation of his malice through Dalton's death brought the danger into stark relief. Every decision now carried weight, and every action required caution. She realized that her survival depended not only on trusting Sonny but also on understanding the full scope of Sidwell's capabilities. She needed to anticipate his moves, prepare for contingencies, and ensure that she was never caught unawares. The stakes were higher than ever, and the consequences of inaction could be catastrophic. As the night progressed, Laura reflected on the intricate web of relationships, rivalries, and hidden agendas that defined Port Charles. Dalton's death was a pivotal event, a fulcrum upon which multiple storylines and character arcs would pivot. The emotional repercussions would ripple outward, affecting BLQ, Dante, Gio, Michael, Britt, Jason, and countless others whose lives were interconnected in ways both visible and hidden. Laura's personal fear and grief were only one layer of a larger tapestry of tension, conflict, and suspense that characterized the